Okay, let me quickly share my screen. And a quick check. Are you all able to see my screen? Perfect. Thank you. Okay. As usual, we will start uh, with reverence to our gurus, to Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati ji, to Dr. Jayakumar Srinivasan ji, and Dr. Raj Vedam ji. All of them have been the inspiration for this particular course and this particular area of learning, right? Uh, we will quickly go through the Shanti Mantra today. Asato ma satgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amrutam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. From untruth, lead me to the truth. From darkness, lead me to enlightenment. And from death, lead me to immortality. Oh, peace, peace, peace. Uh, Namaste, everyone. Today's agenda is going to be comprised of three parts. First is we will do a recap of the previous lecture and the assignments, which will be driven by Ajay. We will then start with the evolution of Bharatiya Astronomy, uh, which where we will go through some interesting facts and anecdotes. And in that process, we will learn how Bharatiya Astronomy evolved over the ages. So that's for 45 minutes. And then we will have some questions and answers towards the end of the session. So that's a very broad outline of how today's session is structured. With that, I will hand over to Ajay to do a recap of the previous lecture. Ajay?
Yes, so in the previous lecture, we went through the concepts of Vedic cosmology. Uh, in there, I thought the best way to recap was actually go through a couple of slides that I used in that lecture. The first slide that gave a overview of what Vedic cosmology is all about. It for the purpose of the lecture, for the purpose of our understanding, we actually uh, partitioned Vedic cosmology into three sections. One was the metaphysics, the other was the spiritual, and the observational part. And we saw that in Vedic cosmology, it was always and never deviated from the fact that we are a part of the universe, which is different from the Western cosmology concepts of being apart from the universe. So I always like to use these two words, apart and a part. Uh, so the Vedic cosmology always assumed that we are a part and never deviated from that concept. Uh, so we talked about all these three different regions of Vedic cosmology, talked about metaphysics, talked about the fact that Brahman and Atman, talked about the cyclical concept of time, talked about the spiritual aspects, where we talked about different lokas and the fact that we are on Bhuloka as a result of our karmic baggage, karmic identity. And the entire cosmology always talked about uh, our purpose in this universe. So our purpose of why we exist on Bhuluka. Why are we here in the first place? And then finally, we touched on the observational part, which is very much a something that is documented in different Siddhantas, different Vedanga, Jyotish, and so on. And even there, we saw that there was no divorce from our being a part of the universe. And so the concept of microcosm and macrocosm. So the concept of Pindanda and Brahmanda. So inside us and outside us. Next slide. So the final recap, we went through different suktas, Nasadiya Sukta, Purusha Sukta, Devi Sukta, Hiranyagarbha Sukta. All of these are part of the Rig Veda. We also talked about how ancient, how the antiquity of the Rig Veda and different sources talking about how old it is, even all the way up to 20,000 BCE. We talked about the different darshanas, the different concepts of philosophy in the Indian tradition, which talk about the birth of the universe, the cosmology aspects in Sankhya and Yoga, darshana philosophy. We also touched upon the Bhagavad Quran, also known as the Srimad Bhagavatam, which talked quite intriguingly about the concept of multiple universes or multiverses existing. And also always, and all the different um, different concepts always talked about the cyclic nature of time and the cyclic creation, utpatti, sthiti, and pralaya. So the origin, the preservation, and the dissolution. So what we can take away from all this is the fact that, first of all, the antiquity of the entire Indian system and the fact that it blends not only observational aspects, but philosophy, spirituality, and looks at the sky and the universe that we are a part of. And I would think of the current Western cosmology being a subset of the entire cosmology, which is so well expressed with our thoughts. Next slide. So I'll quickly go through some of the responses that I got from the assignments. So we'll go through the first assignment, and quite a few of you have come back, and that is very encouraging to look at your responses, look at your understanding, and very clearly the understanding that you all had about the entire Western cosmological theories of the Big Bang, the evidence cited from the Big Bang, to the and some of you said redshift is definitely very confirmatory evidence. Some of you said the cosmic microwave background definitely proves Big Bang, and there was also a very clear understanding of the expansion concept and the inflation concept of the Big Bang explosion, or explosion as they sometimes refer to, but it is different from expansion, which it actually is. And there was also some doubts expressed about trying to understand what happened before the Big Bang, and what is this actual expansion involved. So if you go to the next slide, and so we had asked one question about what existed before the Big Bang, and there was clearly some references. Like one person actually said like asking what was before the book's first page, and that is a very good analogy. And I think that actually, is from the concept of the Western cosmology. It's like talking about time before time existed. And then there was also different people actually referring to this whole, the entire expansion, and the fact that they're given different analogies, different talks about um, like raisins expanding in a dove, or dots in a balloon. So those are all very good examples, and uh, very clearly there is unanswered questions in the Western cosmological concepts, and the concept what is going to happen, what is the future of this entire universe. And a lot of people actually um, agreed with the big bounce concept, and which again is a relatively new concept and a relatively unproven concept from Western terms. But however, it actually corresponds very well to the theories that exist yeah, or for ages in Vedic cosmology. So what we will do is that we will talk about your responses to assignment 2 in the next lecture. So I would encourage you to, because I think I've only got a few responses so far. So I would encourage all the rest of the people who have not submitted the responses to please do so, because we'll be talking about those responses in the next lecture. So over to you, Madhu.
Thank you, Ajay. Uh, okay, so today we will talk about a brief history of Bharatiya astronomy. Before we start, just a quick hygiene check. Is the recording still on, Ajay?
Yes, as far as I
Okay,
can see, yes.
perfect, perfect, perfect. And uh, so, as usual, you will have a lot of questions in the course of this class today. I request you to hold them until the last 5 to 10 minutes where we can take those questions. Right? So, with that said, I will move on. Okay, so let us warm up a little bit with some easy brain teasers, right? So, let me open the first one. Uh, Please go through this question. Can you fill in the blanks? Anyone may answer. After the completion of the yajna, 6 seasons passed. Then in the 12th month, on the 9th day of the month of Chaitra, on the Punarvasu Nakshatra, with the planet in their own or exalted signs, with Cancer as the ascendant, and with Jupiter and the moon in conjunction, Dash gave birth to Dash, the Lord of the universe, who was adored by all worlds, half of Vishnu, and endowed with auspicious marks and great fortune. Uh, yes, please go ahead, Sudha.
Kaushalya gave birth to Lord Rama.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, this is indeed the verse from Valmiki Ramayana, where Valmiki is astronomically marking the birth time of Lord Rama. This is just to give an example of encoding of an astronomical planetary combination in something that is as old as our itihasas. In this case, it is Ramayana, and uh, many would know and many revere today the horoscope of Lord Rama. It is placed in many of our puja rooms, and it is highly revered, right? And this is the basis for charting out Lord Rama's horoscope. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. What does this infographic represent? Yeah,
Is this
anyone
the
may.
nakshatras? Nakshatras, the Western zodiacs, and our Rashi system?
Perfect. Yes, this is indeed our Rasi Chakra and the Nakshatra Mandala. Essentially, this is a representation of the fact that our night sky is divided into 12 Rashis, starting from Mesha all the way until Meena. And the Rashis in turn, and of course, the sky is demarcated into 27 consecutive nakshatras, which we today know from Ashwini all the way until Revati, right? And all the major heavenly bodies, the sun, the moon, the grahas that we see, pass through this band of the sky, which we call as the zodiac, in which the rashis and the nakshatras are present, right? Uh, okay, let's go to the last one for today. What is this? You must have definitely seen this in your science textbooks when you were studying, and it's a popular picture. Any takers? Okay, this is the first man-made satellite Aryabhata from India, named after, of course, one of Bharat's greatest astronomers. Now, there is a reason why I ask these questions. So, in a way, these three different examples showcase the antiquity of our Indian astronomy. So, in the first example, you have an astronomical marker in the form of a verse from Valmiki Ramayana. In the next, you have a more structured and a rules-based representation of the Indian astronomical model. And in the third, we are referring to Aryabhatta, which represents a much more advanced treatment of astronomy. In that sense, it is a progression of how astronomy has evolved across centuries in India. So I just wanted to share that perspective, through the form of some questions. So thank you all for answering it. Now, with that said, we will get into the evolution of Bharatiya astronomy, right? See, Bharatiya astronomy is a vast body of knowledge that has spanned across centuries until today, and we do not even know how far it goes back in known history, right? However, how has it evolved? It is like any other science or any other body of knowledge. It also has a certain evolution path, right? And how has it evolved in India? Let's look at it, right? So it started. Astronomy in India started out as observations that were encoded in our hymns, right? So typically, you will find in our Rig Veda, in the Brahmanas, you will find many references to the stars, the sun, the moon, how the phases of the moon change. You will find some nakshatra names, but all of them are in the form of poetry and verse and in the form of hymns, right? Or in the form of sacrificial stories, because During the times of the Veda, the yajna or the sacrifice was at the center of everything, right? So we are looking at uh, mostly poetic expression of astronomical concepts, right? So it is so sky knowledge is primarily remembered as rituals, instructions, poetry. We don't find much numerical tables or rules or any form of mathematical treatment of astronomy at this stage, which we see today to a very large extent, right? On the other hand, we see celestial objects like the sun and the moon and the nakshatras are personified as heroes, as gods, and stories have been narrated to indicate how the seasons changed, what are the different nakshatras, how the universe began, cosmological concepts like how we discussed in the last class. And the practical purpose of all of this was how can we conduct the rituals and what mantras should be recited in order to conduct the rituals, right? And for demarcating the times at which the rituals should commence and proceed throughout an year, right? So it's primarily oral and metaphorical in nature, right? So you will find that typically it's Rig Veda, Shatapatha Brahmana, where we have ritual instructions and poetic, right? Now, over the course of years, this changed. How did it change, right? So we have texts like the Vedanga Jyotisha, the Sulba Sutras, and of course the Puranas and the Itihasas, where knowledge is largely still covered in the form of stories and anecdotes. However, we are beginning to see a mathematical framework or a rules-based framework for conveying astronomical concepts, right? For example, we started seeing a lunar-based calendar. We started, seeing the rules of what is a sidereal day versus what is a synodic day. We'll touch upon these concepts in a later class. We are talking about what is the underlying principles behind which the phases of the moon are changing, right? Uh, we are talking about the concept of Adhika Masa, why there is an extra month at the end of why there's a need for an extra month at the end of, a few months of time, right? So you can see that again, the focus is more on conducting rituals, yajna. However, we are moving away from just extolling God through the astronomical deities, but also trying to formulate the underlying structure, right? Where we have, like we saw on the last slide, the 12 Rashis, the 27 Nakshatras. So we are trying to give some formal mathematical structure to it, right? So that's how the next stage looked like. Right? And typically you will find Vedanga Jyotisha, which is a fantastic body of text, along with the Sulva Sutras, which form the mathematical basis. And we also have the Puranas and Itihasas, where the metaphorical encoding is still happening, but with a mathematical treatment. Right? Then we move on to a much more advanced or slightly more advanced mathematical modeling of celestial phenomena. And the top text that where this is performed is in the Surya Siddhanta. Right? We also have other pioneering works like the Aryabhatiya, Pancha Siddhantika, Brihat Samhita of Varahamihira, Brahmasputa Siddhanta, another magnum opus work by Brahmagupta, where we are now starting to uh, have a much more rigorous uh, uh, handling of astronomical concepts through mathematical concepts. We have uh, arithmetic, algebra, we have trigonometry, we even have basic elements of calculus being formulated to convey astronomical concepts. Right? For the first time, we are talking about how what causes the rotation of the sun and the moon that is perceived in Earth. We are even going as close as to saying this, the Earth is rotating the sun, and the other planets are rotating the sun. Similarly, kind of very close to the heliocentric model, which we often give credit to the West for starting it, right? So we are talking about calendars. We are talking about tables. We are talking about very rigorous formulation of astronomical knowledge, right? The kind of panchanga that we see today, right? Uh, all those summaries and compilations are all getting formalized in this stage, right? And lastly, and this is in the last 500 years or so, we are seeing a much more advanced manifestation of this through texts such as Siddhanta Shiromani, Tantra Sangraha by Nilakanta Somayaji and Yukti Bhasha, where there is very highly sophisticated mathematics that is being formulated to convey astronomical phenomena, right? For example, as we will see later, we are talking about how Brahmagupta and say Nilakanta Somayaji are trying to provide solutions for Diophantine equations, which is on par with what Western astronomers and scientists of the day are also trying to solve, and how they are looking at ways to understand the universe and the rotation of the planets around the sun. Like I said, we are also talking about heliocentric models, not completely heliocentric like the way we know it today, but what we call as quasi-heliocentric, where we are not, we are still saying planets rotate the Earth, but then the planets are rotating, the sun. The Earth is rotating the sun, like the sun is rotating the Earth also. But we are getting into a phase where the mathematics is getting very advanced and supporting the Indian astronomy, right? So, as you can see, we started from a very qualitative and anecdotal, and narrative, metaphor driven way of conveying astronomical concepts to more and more computational in nature, which is more and more quantified, formulaic, and formalized into tables that we see today, and getting to a very high level of precision. So you see how eclipses are predicted to a very high level of accuracy today. So we have reached that level of sophistication. And I also want to add that the Indian astronomers, wherever required, used the right instrumentation. Sometimes they built their own instrumentation to better understand and observe the astronomical phenomenon as well. So as you can see, just like any other scientific body of knowledge, we have astronomy in India progressing through several stages and getting to the level of advancement that we currently see, right? And here we see some examples of each of these stages. Let's say, for example, in the first stage in Rig Veda, there's a very famous story about Rishi Atri watching a solar eclipse, right? And then he's narrating the solar eclipse. So he says, Yat tava surya swarbhanus tamasa vidyat asuraha akshetra vidyatha muddhau bhavananya adidhayuhu. O Surya, when the Asura's descendant Swarabhanu pierced thee through and through with darkness, all creatures look like one who is bewildered, who knows not the place where he is standing, right? So here Swarabhanu is nothing but Rahu. So you might be aware of the virtual nodes in used in Vedic astrology called as Rahu and Ketu. So Rishyatri is observing a solar eclipse, and he is narrating it as a passage and describing it as the sun being swallowed by Rahu, which is causing a very immense amount of darkness, which scares the peoples and the animals. So he is very, in a very dramatic way, he is explaining the eclipse. And this is typically how it was done in the Vedic and even to an extent the Puranic times, right? But nevertheless, astronomical observations were still marked in uh, in the verses, right? Now, as you move forward, right, if you go to the next stage, astronomy phenomena encoded in stories, you have several astronomical phenomena that are encoded as beautiful stories in our Puranas and Itihasas and other bodies of text, right? So, for example, we have the story of the Chandra and his 27 wives, right? And how this is actually analogous to the moon traversing through the 27 nakshatras of the zodiac, right? So if you actually go through the story of Chandra and the 27 wives, you will see how it very, very closely correlates with the actual observational phenomenon of moon going through the nakshatras. We have the Chandra going through the phases from Amavasya to Paurnami back to Amavasya. And we have the change, the Dakshinayana and the Uttarayana being captured in the form of Vrikasura's story. And again, very famous story of Dhruva, which is also the pole star, which stands as a fixed point of reference in the northern sky. And so there's a story describing how Dhruva happened to get positioned at that point in sky. And then we have several other stories. This is just a sample, but we will have a session further down our course where we will go into a good level of depth into these stories, and you will be amazed at the parallels between the astronomical phenomena and the actual stories, which clearly indicates that our ancient ancestors were observing this phenomena. However, instead of writing them down as dry facts, scientific facts, they were beautifully weaving that into our Puranas in the form of stories and anecdotes and metaphors, with a touch of poetry as well, so that the overall experience of consuming that information becomes very enjoyable, right? You will also have very advanced concepts like time travel being dealt in stories. So, for example, there is the story of I think Balarama and Kakudni, where Kakudni's father, I'm not able to recollect the name now, he is traveling to a different loka from the Bhuloka, and how in that process he finds that the aging or the passage of time happens in a different way in different lokas. We will talk more about that story later. But even advanced concepts like time dilation and length contraction, which are at the forefront of modern astronomy, relativity theory, and all that is being dealt with in a different manner, right? In our stories, right? And then going forward, right, we are talking about. So the third one is a verse from Parameshwara's uh, commentary on Aryabhatiya, where you're now getting to a level where you're talking about mathematics and formulas, right? Subtracting the radius of the moon and subtracting, from the radius of the Earth. He's trying to establish the amount of time that an eclipse will actually be present, right? And in order to do that, they are formulating in terms of mathematics, including trigonometry, geometry, and all that, right? And then lastly, Tantra Sangraha, which is hardly a few centuries back, 1500s or 1400s, where we are talking about very advanced concepts like, how the Mercury and the Venus are rotating the Sun, how to calculate the latitude and the longitude of Mercury and Venus, and many such uh, very advanced, precise numerical, mathematical concepts, right? He also talks about the quasi-heliocentricity that we talked about, right? So we are getting to a very high level of mathematical sophistication over the period of all this time. Right? Now, with that said, right, uh, so the evolution of astronomy knowledge in India has been can be called a scientific, in the modern sense of what we understand as scientific and the rational, right? So there was observations. So in India, observational astronomy was very important, right? And hence the stories that we see. Uh, and so you could see that our ancestors observed eclipses, the phenomenon of occultation, right? So occultation is where one planet eclipses another planet behind. So, for example, you can have moon, although moon is not a planet. I'm just taking the liberty to call it as a graha. The moon actually eclipsing, say, a Saturn or a Jupiter. It's called as occultation. We have evidences of that being observed. We were observing the phases of the moon and trying to understand what was causing those phase changes. We were observing why all stars are rotating except the pole star, which is the Dhruva nakshatra. And, right? But then we have observed it. We don't want to lose that knowledge. We are encoding it as in stories and anecdotes, right? And then we are getting to a stage where we are looking at mathematical modeling, right? Rashi, Chakra, Nakshatra, Mandala. What could possibly cause these eclipses? And we are getting to very, very foundational level mathematics, right? So the formula that you see, the Richa Phala is equal to Phala into Icha by Pramana may seem very trivial, probably by today's mathematical standards. However, it was a very sharp observation of those days, and it's a basic mathematical tool called as the rule of three or the Rasika, which was a fundamental computational method applied repeatedly for planetary motions. Right, so you will find this recurring in many early, Vedanga Jyotisha and the Siddhantic texts, the Rasika model. We are then observing eclipses and we are coming up with the ideas of Rahu and Ketu, right? So we are then looking at how to mathematically model the positions and the velocities of these grahas as they traverse through the sky, right? And then we are getting into empirical modeling, right? So empirical modeling in the sense we are looking at mental models of what could be, the actual science behind our observations, right? For example, uh, is there the Earth at the center, and then the planets are rotating in the form of circles, or is there sun in the center, and all the planets are rotating? We are thinking about these kind of concepts. They call it as epicycle models, right? So we are talking about these kind of theoretical models to go with the mathematical modeling. It is more like a hypothesis that we are putting forward to explain our observation. Say, for example, we are proposing hypothesis on how eclipses, why eclipses do occur, right? And trying to back it up with the mathematics of it, right? We are talking about conjunctions, occultations, and all the astronomical information. We are coming up with theoretical models of how this works. So both of these, the mathematical modeling and the empirical modeling, are getting formalized into concepts, mathematical tools like we talked about the Rasika model, concepts such as the Rashi Chakra and the Nakshatra Mandala, the divisions of the sky. We are talking about mathematical equations like quadratic indeterminate equation, which is used to model these astronomical phenomena and so on and so forth, right? And we are not stopping there, right? We do recognize that we could be wrong, right? So there's a process of refinement, right? So in the process of refinement, we do acknowledge that there were mistakes, there will be mistakes in our previous bodies of knowledge, and we are trying to iterate through them, refine them, correct them. So we are going back to observation, and we are getting more data, and using those data, we are changing our models, and this is a continuous process in which knowledge is evolving, right? And I really want to uh, emphasize the importance and the significance of this, right? Because knowledge was never static. It was never uh, considered to be static, but as an evolving thing, right? So, for example, you have Parameshwara, who is a very, very famous astronomer from Kerala school, saying encoding this in a verse. Say he says, "Kalantere tu samskaraha chintatam ganakottamaihi yatah keshit chakavadadehe sadhutvam chapi anishchitam." What that means is, in course of time, let the other corrections be thought of by the foremost of astronomers and mathematicians, because after a few years, the correctness of my parameters is not certain. So not only it shows the humility of Parameswara's knowledge, but it also highlights the way we were iterating and refining our entire body of knowledge, right? And in that process, we had to sharpen our instrumentation as well. So there were many instruments that were devised to observe more accurately the natural, the astronomical phenomenon, and these were all uh, used to collect more accurate data, and then further refine our understanding of the entire knowledge, right? And then all of these were iteratively documented into precise calculations. The very detailed panchangas that we see with a lot of these numerical values and all that. And if you look at one of the astronomical texts from the 14th century or the 15th century, you will see that it's extremely heavy on very intricate mathematics. All of that has been as a result of the continuous refinement of knowledge through modeling and observation, right? And so the takeaway from this slide is that we have always been following what we call as a scientific approach to understanding astronomy, right? So I just wanted to convey that or emphasize on that point, right? Now, yeah, we just talked about this. In course of time, let the other corrections be thought of by the foremost of astronomers, because after a few years, the correctness of my parameters is not certain, right? And okay, now with that said, okay, so I hope that provides a kind of understanding of our approach and the timeline of the evolution, right? Now, we talked uh, we talked about Puranas, Itihasas, how astronomical phenomena were marked there, like Ajay talked about in the previous lecture. So we are now moving into the next era of Indian astronomy, where Vedanga Jyotisha is the prime text, which is the earliest full-fledged treatise on Indian astronomy. Right? So as the name suggests, Vedanga Jyotisha is Vedanga, the limbs of the Veda, right? The limb of the Veda, that is Jyotisha, right? So what are the limbs of the Vedas? You might be familiar with this, but I'll still go through. Jyoti kalpo niruktam cha shiksha vyakaranam tatha chando vichiti etani shadangani viduhu shrutehe. The Vedas have six limbs, namely Jyotisha, Kalpa, Nirukta, Shiksha, Vyakarana, Chandas. Right? Now, uh, Nirukta, just coming from the right. So Nirukta is etymology, right? The meanings or the root of the different Sanskrit words that 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 are there. It is dealt with extensively in Nirukta, right? So it talks about especially words that are archaic and have ancient uses where there's an ambiguity in their meaning. So it's more used for a linguistic analysis, right? And then there is shiksha, which is and each of them, by the way, has a body part that represents the character of that Vedanga also. Shiksha is the nose, which stands for instruction or teaching, right? Which is focusing on the letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, how one ought to accent, what is the stress that you need to apply on the syllables, what is the melody, and what are the rules of the phonetic combination. So it encaptures all the sounds and phonetics of the Sanskrit language. And then there is Kalpa, primarily used for ritualistic instructional purpose. So what are the procedures for conducting the Vedic rituals, uh, when they should be conducted, uh, how does it for what all events they should be conducted, like the birth, the wedding, if there's a death in the family, etc., etc. And also it deals with the personal conduct and the duties of an individual in the different stages of their life. So this is all dealt with in Kalpa, which is not only the procedures, but also there's a dharma that is part of it. Then we have Vyakarana. I don't have to explain this. It embodies the entire grammatical framework of the Sanskrit language, all the rules, all the analysis of the language. How do you form sentences, right? Of course, spearheaded by the great Panini, our earliest grammarian, who came up with the brilliant work of Ashtadhyayi, right? So all that is embodied in the Vyakarana part of it. And then we have Chandas, which is meter, or which talks about the amount of syllables that need to be there in every verse, and for different types of verses, the different kinds of chandas that needs to be used. And then last but not the least is Jyotisha, right? Jyotisha is the eye of the Vedanga, right? It is an observational Vedanga, right? So it talks about what is the right time for rituals, what is the right time for coronation of the king, the right time to do certain auspicious events in life, and it is basically a timekeeping focused Vedanga, right? And yeah, the Vedanga Jyotisham itself says, like the crests on the heads of the peacocks, like the gems on the hoods of the cobras, astronomy is at the top of the Vedanga Shastra. Jyotisha is at the top of the Vedanga Shastras, right? So Jyotisha is fundamental, right? You need to, for conducting the yajna, which is, of course, the fundamental concept in the Vedic era, you need to have Jyotisha. So it is, in a way, a foundational body of knowledge, right? So calendar. So since timekeeping, calendar keeping, all of these were very important, and hence Jyotisha attained its importance because of that, right? Uh, just a quick time check. I'll go for another maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then we can then open the floor for questions, right? Jyotisha in turn is broadly divided into three parts: Ganita, Samhita, and Hora. Right? Now, the Ganita is the mathematical astronomy, right? So it is the calculation, mathematical treatment, and and the knowledge about the planetary systems, the asterisms, the spherical astronomy, all the, let's say, the physical aspects of the Jyotisha is dealt with in Ganita, right? Again, Ganita is the basis. Ganita is in turn foundational to Jyotisha itself, because it is on that basis that we can uh, have Samhita and Hora. Samhita is what today we call it as mundane astrology, right? For example, weather predictions, the nature of eclipses, and the signs of meteors, the signs of rainbows, the signs of different natural phenomena like earthquakes, all of that is dealt. So all those events that affect populations at large are dealt with in Samhita. For example, COVID is a fantastic case study for someone who is working on Samhita, right? So they will have theories to explain why something like that happened that affected a huge mass of population. So probably there is a uh, astronomical or a Jyotish basis for that, which indeed is there. If you actually go into Varaha Mihira's Brihat Samhita, you will find how certain astronomical phenomena correlate with epidemics in the earth. Right? However, that is not the subject of this course for sure, so we will not get into that. And then we have Hora, which is getting into personal astrology, right? So predictions based on birth, right? So based on the individual's birth time, what is the blueprint of his of this person as he is born on the earth, what are the potentials in his life in terms of his education, marriage, what is his character, what are the things that happen as per his karma, all those things are dealt with in Hora. And then we have Prashna, which is more time based, right? So Prashna, as some of you might know and have experience with, is based on the time the question was asked to an astrologer, there are some predictions or suggestions. So that is Prashna. Then there is Muhurta, which is fixing auspicious times. For example, for swearing in as the Prime Minister of India, or for fixing marriage timings, or etc. etc. And then there is Nimitta, or the omens, which is the for example, there are different omens like lizard, making a sound, and many such things, which also have a science behind it, right? So obviously, Samhita and Hora falls into what we broadly classify as astrology. We are not going to focus on that as part of this course. However, we will go into a little bit of depth on the Ganita part of it, which is the Bharatiya Astronomy, the mathematical aspects of astronomy. We will talk about spherical geometry, coordinate systems, planets, eclipses, precision, and all those physical astronomical phenomena, right? So, in the interest of time, I will pause here. Obviously, we are only scratching the surface here of something that is vast, right? So, the intent behind having these is before we get into the core Indian astronomical model, which is a rigorous mathematical treatment of astronomy, we need to understand the broader picture of what these different texts are, right? And hence, we are so this is more like a context setting in that sense, so that when we talk about the other concepts down the line, we will have a perspective of where this fits into our astronomical timeline, right? So with that, I will pause my talk for now, and I will, you feel free to ask any questions or any comments or suggestions that you may have.
So, Madhu, there was one question from Sudha on
Okay.
the chat box. So maybe you can have a look through the chat box.
Okay. So from Vedic hymns to modern mathematical modeling, what methods ensure that information was not diluted through transmission or translation? Fantastic question. Okay. So, uh, see, I'll try to answer to the best of my knowledge. Right? I may not be correct here, right? See, first of all, the entire body of knowledge is subject to interpretation, right? So, for example, in next class we will talk about Vedanga Jyotisha as timeline, right? Now, these are all encoded as some verses, right? So that is one aspect to it, right? Now, the verses may be interpreted by different people in different ways, right? Now, not only between Western astronomers and Indian astronomers, but even within Indian astronomers, there are different points of view on how to interpret these verses. So there is always a margin of error in which we are operating, number one. Secondly, uh, the information, see, just like science, modern astronomy, they say it's built on the giants of shoulders. There is a continuous process of challenging, not accepting what others said. For example, we'll talk about how Aryabhatta is one of the foremost astronomers. However, his 2 centuries later, we had Bhaskara. I think we had Bhaskara 1, if I remember. Bhaskara 1, who was a very strong adherent of Aryabhatta. He just followed what Aryabhatta said. However, there was, I think, Brahmagupta, who was highly critical of Aryabhatta and everything that he did, right? Now, so which means he actually said Aryabhatta is wrong, and he tried to then formulate the same concept in a different way. So there was a very natural system of checks and balances present in this evaluation process that ensured that only the truth, which was supported by observational evidence, that prevailed over a period of time, right? So that is, I just wanted to mention that. Having said that, there is definitely lost in translation kind of things. Interpretation related errors are bound to be there. But then that is how any knowledge, for that matter, progresses. Even modern scientific knowledge or modern medical knowledge, you know,
Right.
you make a mistake, you have the courage to admit the mistake, you then go back, correct it, and pursue. And that's the way it has been followed. And the testimony to all that is today we are able to calculate to the second when Chandra Grahana is bound to happen. Incidentally, talking about Grahanas, there's a major Surya Grahana that's going to happen tomorrow. That's a different thing. But we are able to predict when exactly a nakshatra changes. Sorry, the moon goes from one nakshatra to another. So that is so the proof of the pudding is in the eating, so to speak. It's a result of years of revision of the knowledge that was available. Let's hope that answers your question. You
Yes,
know,
Madhuji, thank you. Because I was just trying to compare with what little knowledge I have. So I'm a Shilpa Shastra artist, so I'm learning Shilpa Shastra and everything. So even in Shilpa Shastra, we have Rupa Dhyana Shloka, where we describe the deity's features in that particular. I mean, the shloka contains the interpretation of how a particular deity should be formulated and so on. So, as a visual knowledge or an observation, or what Ajay ji covered the last time, like Prakriti, right? Observation and everything, right? So when we go to our temples today, we are able to see or compare what we learned during with the Rupa Dhyana Shloka with those measurements versus what we see in the temple structure. So for me, I'm able to visually see things. In when I go to temples, okay, let's say if I'm going to look at Ardhanarishvara, for example, it should be how there should be a symmetry between the female body and the male body. And then in the Rupa Dhyana Shloka, it also says that at the stomach, at the Nabhi place, there is a slight twist to the body of Ardhanarishvara where you need to make those. And then from there onwards, you need to bend it at an angle of like 45-degree to make the legs in this direction. So for me, we have the Rupa Dhyana Shloka and I'm able to comprehend that and visually see when I go to temple. So I understand our scriptures are so vast and yeah, I'm just trying to correlate everything. Yeah.
yeah, no, no, definitely. I think you will see the process of knowledge assimilation has been almost the same across all our Vedangas, right? Which is observe, model, refine, iterate, correct it, and then the knowledge keeps evolving, right? And with absolute democracy that we can think, the license to challenge anyone, not to accept in the true Indian sense, all those things. I think it's a really thanks for sharing that. It's a very beautiful progression of the overall Indian body of knowledge. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Sudhaji, for sharing that. Just a couple of points I wanted to add is that this knowledge development was actually all over. It's something that Madhu will go through in the next lecture, but all over the subcontinent. So there was this entire system was not concentrated in one area or the other. It was actually very, very widespread. And so there was a very constant communication happening between the different centers of knowledge development. And so that kind of also ensured this lack of dilution as you went from one to the other. And the second thing is the fact that even though it is in some ways evolution of knowledge, but I would say it is something which is happening in parallel. So there is not, it's not that one system of knowledge or the advanced equation development followed the stories. So it's more of that everything happened together in some ways. So it's not it is not a linear process.
Yeah. So I would like to add one more thing, which we will cover in the next class in greater detail. Is see the greatest potential for not only dilution but for the loss of such a huge body of knowledge came at the point of the Mughal invasion into India, right? Especially in the North India, where these very prominent astronomers like Aryabhatta and Bhaskara and all those people were there. North India was flourishing with astronomy research. However, after this invasion, there was a period of lull for about 2 centuries or 3 centuries. And in that process, a lot of information was indeed lost. A lot of libraries were destroyed.
Yeah.
However, knowledge is beautiful, right? It finds a place to thrive. So the entire focus shifted to the south part of India, which was relatively shielded from the invasions of the Mughals, and hence the Kerala school of astronomy flourished. So the Kerala school of mathematics and astronomy today is, is a point of reference for how brilliant our astronomical knowledge is, right? So yes, dilutions happen, but they're all temporary phases, right? Ultimately, knowledge finds a place to thrive and blossom, especially in a country like Maharashtra. So it has happened. It has been God's destiny that the knowledge is continuing even to the day, through our interactions that we are having currently. So yeah, I hope that gives some kind of a perspective.
So,
Uh,
just before we end, I think I see a couple of new people on the call. Is that I will come? I think it's Vinod Kumar. I'm not seeing him before, and I'm not sure if I've seen Jai Priya.
yeah, Jaypriya she has been there. I think she introduced herself for a couple of
Oh, she did.
classes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about it.
Hari Om, it's Vinod Kumar. Actually, I came for the first introduction class. So last 2 weeks, I'm just
Okay.
traveling, and I just see the recorded video and just joining live this week. I'll be
Okay.
joining live hereafter.
Okay. Perfect. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, observations? Okay. If not, we can wind up for today, and we will meet next Sunday at the same time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Have a good
Thanks a
evening.
lot, Moduji. Yeah.
Thank you.